Good writing isn't just the words you put on the page, but it is, but it isn't, but it is. Welcome to How to Write Good. I am your host, Daniel Poppie. You can find out more about me at danielpoppie.com. If it is your first time here, How to Write Good is a writing podcast that seeks to find principles and advice that can be applied across a broad range of writing situations. If you've been here before, don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button below, and share. To start out this episode, I think we need to look at how writing works, or at least how it looks like it works. So how it looks like writing works is that you explain things in as detailed and specific a way as possible. And if you do that, people only need a good enough grasp of the language to understand what you are saying or what you're trying to communicate. But I think if we look at writing in this way, I think we are missing a very important aspect of what good writing actually is. Good writing is not just words on the page. You might be thinking that's crazy, or you might agree with that completely. But let me just say it again. Good writing is not just the words on the page. And if I can add something else, which seems like it's in complete contradiction to what I just said, the words on the page dictate whether it is or is not good writing. Maybe saying this in a different way will make it make a bit more sense. Good writing depends on the words written down and the interplay of the person reading the book. And we may even go so far as to say that good writing is the interplay of the written word with the culture, especially the linguistic aspect of the culture. For those of you who could not care less about the philosophical aspect of writing, maybe you'll understand it better in this way, or maybe it'll stick in your mind if I explain it in this way. Good writing connects to the person who is reading it in a way that brings him or her into the intended experience of the writing. So good writing understands its audience, and the mere use of words does not bring that audience into the intended experience of the writer. Today I'm going to be talking about one aspect of writing that helps us come closer to bringing the audience into the experience we intend them to experience. That aspect of writing we all need to be aware of is the things that need to be left unsaid. We need to explain things in writing up to a certain point, but no further. If we don't have enough detail, the reader will not be able to experience that thing, that action, that event, etc. in the way we want them to experience it. But if we have too much detail, the same thing happens. The reader has a sensory overload, and the reader is unable to experience that thing, that action, that event, etc. in the way we intend them to experience it. Now, one important thing I need to make note of before I move on is that not every writer is going to have the same level of detail. This is because not every writer is intending to reach the same audience. One example will make this clear. If I'm writing for someone who is an auto mechanic, I do not need to explain every single piece of a vehicle and how every single piece works. But if I am writing for someone who is learning to become an auto mechanic, I need to write about every single piece and how every single piece works. So in the former area, writing for people who are already auto mechanics, I don't need to add as much detail. But in the latter area, the people who are learning to become auto mechanics, I need to add more detail. It is necessary for that person to understand what I'm talking about. So if you are writing a story set in China, for people who do not live in China, you are going to be adding more detail. And if you are writing a story set in China for people who live in China, you are not going to be adding as much detail because you do not need to explain as much about the Chinese culture. We can see how this happens naturally between different genres. The thriller genre does not explain as many things as the science fiction genre or the fantasy genre, because the thriller genre is almost always set in the present day and it's connecting to present day readers. The science fiction genre is often set in the future, and the fantasy genre is set in a different world entirely, oftentimes. And because these are set in different worlds than our own, the writer needs to take more time explaining the different aspects of those worlds so that the present-day reader can understand them. So the knowledge of the audience in relation to what you're writing is very important to know. The larger the gap in knowledge, the more writing you'll likely have to do. But just because we understand where the audience is coming from does not mean we're going to write things in a way that will allow the audience to experience our writing as we want our writing to be experienced. The process of getting to the point where our audience is experiencing something as we want it to be experienced takes a lot of practice and effort, but I think this one tip will help you get closer to that end goal. When you look at certain things in your life, when you experience certain things in your life, take note of how you experience them. What you will notice is that we do not experience things as a whole. We do not experience things in full detail. And I can't think of a time when we ever experience things in full detail. I'm sitting on a chair right now. I cannot see the chair, but I can feel it under one arm and when I'm sitting on it. I'm looking at a computer right now, but I only see one part of the computer, which is the screen. If I look around the room, I can see bits and pieces of the room, but I never see the room fully. Again, we do not experience things in full detail. We never experience things in full detail. We experience things as bits and pieces that we put together, and then we create this vague understanding of the world around us. So even if you are writing about a creature in a fantasy world, or even if you are writing about a technology in a future 1,000 years away, you still need to approach these things similar to how we experience things. If you were standing in the same room as that creature, or if you were standing in the same room as that piece of technology, what would you notice about it? Would you notice everything about it, or would you notice the basic function? And that is what you are trying to do. You are trying to put yourself into the mindset as if you are experiencing what you are writing about, and then you make that writing reflect how you experience it in the best possible way you're able to. Now you might be thinking, how can this help me? How can this make my writing connect to other people? What if I experience something differently than other people? First, I don't think that is likely. I think there is a general baseline for most people who are reading and how they are going to experience that same thing. I think they have enough analogs within their life to understand how you are explaining things, and if they don't, it's likely they are not your intended audience. But if you still have that concern, I would say that you should try to find how other people experience things. I've talked about in the past how I think writing is an empathetic thing. You need to understand how people work so you can connect to them through your writing. So if you are concerned that people are not going to be able to connect to your writing because you experience those things so differently than that person or that group of people, then you need to take the time to try to understand that person or that group of people. Somebody else might wonder, if I'm writing how people experience things, won't this make my writing boring? Maybe. That might be the case. But you need to make people experience something before you add something else onto that experience. If a person has no analog in their life with which to compare what you're writing about, they won't experience the thing in the first place, and the point you're trying to make with that thing, whether it's just to flesh out a world or a character, or if you're trying to make character change, or if you're trying to make a revelation about our world, You're not going to get to the point of revealing that to the person who's reading it if you can't get to the point of connecting to that person in the first place. The last thing I'm going to leave you with is this. Most people are not looking at themselves and studying how they experience things in the world. Most people go about their lives and they don't have time to do that. And it is often the case that when you get to the heart of something, when you peel back all the layers of that thing and you get to the core, the pure core of what that thing is, explaining what that pure core is in the clearest way possible is revelatory to the reader. So I wouldn't really worry about it. Of course, this is not the end of writing. This isn't the beginning of writing. Writing is a very complex process. And if you want to know more about the writing process, you can always check out my other episodes up here. Or if you're listening to this on audio, you can check them out in the links below. If you enjoyed this, you're probably wondering how you can support me. Well, you can actually do two simple things. Follow the first link below to grab a copy of my book, and then follow the second link and sign up for my newsletter. It's that simple. Those two things will mean the world to me and give me more time to write books and create content for you. As always, my name is Daniel Poppie, and this is How to Write Good.